So Apple stock, huh? It's almost like what's the word? The safe bet in investing. Everyone always seems to recommend it. But is it still a good buy in 2025? I mean, really?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it?
Well, we're going to try to get some answers today, diving into an article from a Motley Fool.
Ah, the fools.
They're usually pretty spot on with their analysis, and they seem pretty bullish on Apple in this one. They lay out like three big arguments. So let's take a look, shall we?
Let's do it.
Okay, so first up, they're talking about Apple Intelligence. You know, that big launch back in late 2024. It was supposed to be huge.
Right, a game changer, they said.
Exactly. But the market reaction was, well, kind of meh.
Yeah, it was a little underwhelming. I remember iPhone sales didn't jump the way a lot of people were expecting.
No, they didn't. In fact, the article mentions that iPhone shipments actually dipped a little bit right after the launch.
Interesting. But, maybe it's too early to write it off completely.
You think so?
I do. I think maybe people just need a little more time to, understand what Apple Intelligence can really do, especially when you consider the whole privacy thing.
That's a good point. That was a big part of their messaging, right? Apple Intelligence, your data stays yours.
Exactly. Apple's really leaning into this whole vertically integrated approach with their AI.
Vertically integrated.
It basically means they control the whole shebang, the chips, the software, everything. It's like a closed loop, keeping your data safe and sound.
Oh, I see. So your data is way less likely to end up on some random server farm, right?
Right. It either stays on your device or it goes to Apple's own super secure servers.
That's a big deal in today's world. Everyone's freaking out about data privacy for good reason.
Absolutely. I mean, look at ChatGPT or Google's Gemini. Your data goes up to the cloud, and who knows what happens to it then.
Right. It's a black box. So do you think this whole privacy angle could give Apple a real advantage in the AI race?
I think it's a huge differentiator. More and more people are becoming wary of just handing over their data. So Apple positioning themselves as the safe option for AI, that could be a powerful message.
For sure. Okay, so privacy is one big thing to watch with Apple. But the article also points out some other interesting moves they're making, specifically in terms of, well, partnerships.
Partnerships.
Yeah. Apple, the company that's famous for its walled garden approach.
Right. They're not exactly known for playing nicely with others.
Exactly. But it seems like they're branching out a bit, which I have to say is a bit surprising.
It is interesting to see them venturing outside their comfort zone.
Yeah. And some of these partnerships are pretty big deals, especially when you look at a market like China. For example, they've teamed up with Alibaba, the e-commerce giant, to bring AI features to iPhone users over there.
Wow, Apple and Alibaba. That's an interesting pairing.
Right. I mean, talk about a massive market.
Absolutely. And they're not stopping there. The article mentions they're continuing their work with Baidu, too, China's top search engine.
I didn't know that.
Yep, also on the AI front.
So they're really pushing into the Chinese market in a big way.
It seems that way, which, suggests they're recognizing they might need to be a little more flexible.
Yeah, maybe that whole walled garden approach isn't going to cut it anymore in a global market.
Perhaps not.
But here's another partnership that I thought was really interesting. They're now letting Android users access the Apple TV app.
What? Seriously?
Yep. So they're opening up their content, their streaming service, to a whole new audience outside the Apple ecosystem.
Now, that's a major shift. Apple letting Android users in, huh? That signals a pretty big willingness to, well, adapt.
It does, doesn't it? So for everyone listening out there, what do you think about these partnerships? Does it make you more bullish on Apple, seeing them branching out like this? Or is it more like they're scrambling for growth? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, you could definitely see it both ways, right? On one hand, it shows Apple's recognizing they need to diversify. They can't rely on iPhone sales forever.
Yeah, that's true. And speaking of the iPhone.
The elephant in the room.
Exactly. It still makes up a huge chunk of their revenue.
Oh, absolutely. But like you said, it's not going to be the hot new thing forever.
Nope.
But on the other hand, these partnerships, do they kind of make you wonder if Apple's maybe losing a little focus, diluting their brand? It's something to keep an eye on, that's for sure.
Yeah, agreed. It'll be interesting to see how these collaborations actually play out, whether they can really move the needle for Apple long term. Okay, so we've got Apple dipping their toes into the AI world and making some interesting new partnerships. But what about the bottom line? Is Apple still the money-making machine we all know and love?
Well, that's where things get tricky.
Uh-oh.
The article's pretty upfront about it. Apple's growth has stalled.
Really?
Yeah, and they're basically blaming it on the iPhone.
Which makes sense, I guess. I mean, it still accounts for, what, like half their revenue?
Around there, yeah. Which is a lot riding on one product.
No kidding. But even with that stagnation, Apple's still the most profitable company in the world. Did you see that number? They pulled in almost $94 billion in net income last year.
It's an insane amount of money.
Insane. And not only that, they've got this massive cash hoard, something like $140 billion sitting there.
Yeah, they could buy a small country with that.
Right. I mean, seriously, that kind of financial power gives them a huge advantage. They can basically outspend anyone, snap up any promising startups that come along, weather any economic storm.
It's like a financial fortress. And they've been smart about using that cash, too, buying back tons of their own stock, which, drives up the share value for investors. The Motley Fool's basically arguing that this financial strength makes Apple, well, almost unstoppable in the long run.
That's a pretty strong argument. But I'm curious, for you listening out there, does this whole financial picture make you feel more confident about Apple's future? Or does that dependence on the iPhone still have you a little nervous? It's a bit of a double-edged sword, isn't it?
It is. It's the million-dollar question. They've got the financial firepower for sure, but relying so heavily on one product, it can be risky, especially in the tech world where things change so fast.
Right. And that brings up another big question. Can Apple keep innovating? Can they keep coming up with those game-changing products that have, defined their success? I mean, think about it. The competition is fierce out there.
Oh, absolutely.
Google, Samsung, all the other big players.
Yeah, they're not just going to sit back and watch Apple run the show.
Exactly. And technology's changing so fast these days.
So fast.
AI, augmented reality, the metaverse. It's like, how do you even predict what the next big thing is going to be?
It's hard to say.
But Apple's been pretty good at it so far.
Yep, they have.
They've got this knack for creating products that people, well, they don't just want them, they need them.
They really do.
Think about it. The iPod, the iPhone, the Apple Watch, they weren't just gadgets. They were
cultural moments, yeah.
Exactly. They totally redefined entire industries.
And they did it by, weaving those products into their ecosystem.
Right, that walled garden we were talking about.
It's a brilliant strategy, really.
It is. Once you're in, it's hard to leave.
Oh, totally.
You're using Apple Music, iCloud, all those services. Switching to another brand feels like, I don't know.
A mated upheaval?
Yeah, it's a hassle. So the big question is, can they keep that magic going? Can they keep innovating in a way that keeps people, hooked on the Apple world?
That's the billion-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is.
It's not just about coming up with cool new tech. It's about understanding what people actually want,
right,
what they value, and how to, seamlessly integrate those things into their existing ecosystem.
And they have to do all of that while facing some pretty serious competition.
Oh, yeah. The competition is relentless.
For sure. So they really need to pick their battles carefully.
Absolutely.
And speaking of battles, the article touches on another challenge for Apple China.
Ah, yes, China.
It's a tricky relationship, to say the least.
It really is.
We talked about those partnerships with Alibaba and Baidu,
right,
which shows they're willing to, play ball within the Chinese system.
To a certain extent.
But the Chinese market is, well, it's complicated.
It is incredibly complex.
Lots of political and regulatory uncertainties.
Oh, tons.
And, Apple relies heavily on Chinese manufacturing.
Sure.
So any disruptions to their supply chain, any trade tensions.
Yeah, any kind of political shakeup.
It could have a big impact on their bottom line.
Absolutely. It adds a whole other layer of complexity for investors to consider.
Right. It's not just about Apple's products and profits anymore.
It's about understanding the geopolitical landscape.
Exactly.
Bigger picture.
So let's bring it back to our main question. Is Apple stock still a good buy? The Motley Fool seems pretty confident.
They do. They make some good points.
They point to Apple's financial strength, which is, undeniable.
Oh, it's impressive.
And these strategic moves, like those Chinese partnerships, the push into AI.
Yeah, it suggests they're thinking long term.
But there are those nagging concerns.
Right.
The iPhone dependence, the competition.
It's not a sure thing, that's for sure.
Nope, it's definitely not a slam dunk.
It really comes down to individual risk tolerance, I think.
Yeah.
Your investment goals.
How much faith do you have in Apple's ability to keep innovating, to navigate these challenges?
It's a tough call.
And that's where you come in, dear listener.
You've heard the arguments, you've weighed the risks.
Now it's up to you
to decide if Apple stock has a place in your portfolio.
Exactly. And if you're still on the fence, hey, no shame in doing a little more research.
None at all.
The Motley Fool's a good starting point, but there are tons of resources out there.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Read different perspectives, crunch the numbers, trust your gut.
And remember, investing, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Very true.
It's about making those thoughtful, long-term decisions.
Well said. And speaking of long-term thinking, I want to leave you with a thought that the article didn't explicitly mention.
Well, is it?
But it's something I've been thinking about a lot lately.
Go on.
It's about, the bigger picture of technology.
Okay.
Its role in our lives.
Yep.
We've been talking about Apple's products, their finances.
Right.
But what about the impact of technology on society as a whole?
That's a big one.
It is, isn't it? Is it ultimately a force for good? Or are we heading down a path we might regret?
Wow, that's a question for the ages,
It really is.
and one that's incredibly relevant, especially when we're talking about investing in companies like Apple.
Right, they're shaping the future of technology.
They are.
So we need to think beyond just the balance sheet.
I agree.
How do we ensure technology is used ethically? How do we balance innovation with privacy and security?
These are the questions we should all be asking.
We should, not just as investors, but as, well, citizens of the world.
Absolutely.
And these conversations need to happen everywhere.
They do.
At our dinner tables, in classrooms, in boardrooms.
And yeah, even on podcasts like this one.
Exactly. So as you continue your deep dive into the world of Apple and the world of tech in general,
Right.
keep those bigger questions in mind.
It'll add another dimension to your thinking.
It will.
It adds a sense of responsibility to our choices as investors.
Because ultimately, our investments, they have the power to shape the future.
They do, for better or worse.
It's a lot to think about, right? All these different aspects of technology.
Oh, definitely.
Like, on the one hand, it's this incredible force. We can use it for so much good. But like any powerful tool, it comes with its own set of challenges. It's like we're trying to find the sweet spot, harnessing the good without letting things get out of hand.
Yeah, finding that balance.
Exactly. And AI, I mean, that's a perfect example, right?
Oh, absolutely.
The potential is huge.
Huge. Healthcare, transportation, education, it could revolutionize everything. But
There's always a but.
there is. I mean, you have to think about the potential downsides, too. Job displacement, biased algorithms, AI getting into the wrong hands.
It's scary to even think about.
And those aren't just hypothetical concerns anymore. We're already seeing examples of AI being used in ways that are, a little unsettling.
It's true. And it's not just AI, it's the whole digital landscape. Social media, for example. I mean, it's this incredible tool for connecting people, right? Sharing ideas, building communities.
Right. But then it also becomes a breeding ground for misinformation, polarization. It can be toxic.
It can. And then there's the whole issue of data privacy, which we talked about a bit earlier. It feels like our lives are becoming more and more digital. Every click, every purchase, every interaction is being tracked, analyzed.
Companies are gathering so much data about us. It's a little unsettling.
It is, and it raises some important questions, doesn't it? Like, how do we make sure our data is being used ethically? How do we maintain some control over our own digital footprints?
Big questions. And I don't think there are easy answers. It's this constant push and pull between, convenience and privacy.
I know, it's like we want the personalized experiences, the seamless immigration, but we also want to feel like we have some agency, over our own information, our own lives.
It's a tough one, but I think it starts with awareness. People need to understand how their data is being collected, how it's being used.
Right. And companies need to be more transparent, right?
Absolutely. They need to prioritize user privacy, not just pay lip service to it.
And maybe we need, I don't know, stronger regulations to protect consumers, hold companies accountable.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's a complex issue, but it's one we can't ignore. Our lives are becoming more and more intertwined with technology.
They really are. So, wow, we started with a simple question, is Apple stock a good buy?
Right?
And we ended up talking about, the future of AI, the impact of technology on society, the ethics of investing.
It's amazing where these conversations can lead, isn't it? There's always so much to learn, so much to think about. It never ends.
It doesn't. So to everyone listening, thanks for sticking with us through this deep dive. I hope it's given you some food for thought.
Yeah, and maybe even spark some important conversations with your friends, your family, whoever.
Absolutely. And as you continue to explore the world of technology and finance, remember to stay curious.
Stay informed.
And most importantly, stay engaged.
Because in the end, the future is what we make it.
Well said. Thanks for joining us.